Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to every one of you. It's a great pleasure and a great honor that you are all here. To start with, I haven't expected that huge number of participants. I think around 80 people signed up for, and we have already 50 people in here. So what we're going to try to do is we will make it two parts. In the first part, I will just show you the very basic things, how to run interactive experiments in the online classroom. We are a good online classroom here, I guess, with people from all over the world, from the US until to Japan. So a huge group of people, and we will take the role as participants of the experiments, go through some of the experiments. This will be the first 45 minutes, and then we just have room for questions and answers. As I didn't expect so many participants, I asked for some help by Florian, who also joined virtually. You can see him. We're starting with Classics team. So I hope Florian will help to answer questions in the chat. If you have something in between that you want to ask, where can I find this? Florian can be of much help there. So Florian, thanks a lot also for joining. If you want, you can turn your cameras on. You don't have to. Feel free like you want. I'm just mentioning that this thing is recorded. So if you don't want your name to show up, you just also have to change your name in the Zoom meeting. Just some words who I am. I'm Marcus Giamattei. I'm a professor for macroeconomics at College Berlin. I am also an external fellow at the University of Passau in Germany and at the University of Nottingham, where I spent some time. I did my PhD on bounded rationality and experimental macroeconomics. So by training, I'm a macroeconomist, but I'm doing a lot of behavioral and experimental economics in my research. And my habilitation to become a professor also deals with similar topics, extending it a little bit also on topics of cooperation, but always in the field of theory, experiments, and also always with a huge interest in teaching. But that would not be possible without a lot of people around me. So you have already seen Florian, who is one member of the Passau team, together with Johan and Susie, which you can see on the left. Lucas and Simon are two cooperators from Nottingham, mainly focusing on, with them we're doing a project on online experiments on mTurk. And with Umberto Javador from Pompeo Fabra, Ted Bergstrom and John Miller, we do some teaching materials, which I also will present later here. And the thanks goes to all these people, because without them, this all wouldn't be possible. Yeah, I had this crazy idea. Okay, we are all in the same situation. We are all colleagues teaching in different universities around the globe, and that's what brought me to initiate this little webinar series. Today we're going to do part 1, and I labeled it now part 1A. So run experiments with Classics. So very basic, how you do an experiment that is already available on Classics. The recording will be available later at the webpage. As there was some request for this, we're planning a SEER part 1B to be scheduled, experiments for teaching macroeconomics. That comes from my interest in such topics. But we are also open for any additional topic webinars if something is of interest. So there's a lot of experiments on Classics, and these topic webinars would be in such a form that we present some experiments some people developed, which fit well into the standard schedules of macroeconomics, microeconomics, environmental economics, topics like this. And the other thing that you already saw is a workshop with a smaller group of people, because otherwise I think it will not be possible, how to develop own experiments. If you are signed up for this webinar, you also get all the other information. If you don't want to get any further information, then you can just sign off. ClassX is also can also be used for research. This will not be the topic of today. We used it in a beer garden in Germany during the soccer championship 2014. So you can use it also in the field for gathering data. But our focus today is teaching and experiments in the online classroom. And we will also play free of such interactive experiments. We started back in 2012 when we had this big lecture hall with around 400 participants. We wanted to run a macroeconomic experiment about consumption and savings behavior. And we started with these little leaflets that you can see here in red and blue. And we thought, okay, that there must be better ways to do this. And that's why I started programming ClassX, first for this purpose, and then it started developing. You can see also a screenshot of the very first design of ClassX, which was much more gray and looked a bit different. So the idea was, okay, we have the classroom and we can make use of this technology of smart and mobile phones to enrich the offline classroom. Now with the pandemic, the focus has changed a bit, but it's flexible in the same way that we can use it also for the online classroom. Why do we do this? So what is the motivation? First of all, it's a bit of a mission. It's a bit of a mission that we think teaching with experiments, and I think I don't have to convince this audience here, is the right way to teach and a good way to make models, make students experience models in the classroom. So our idea is that we can make small or big lectures, whatever they are, interactive, that students can participate. And we wanted to do this. This is this picture here on the right. First of all, that people can take a lot of ready-made experiments. So there's a lot of standard experiments which are pre-programmed, which you can just take and use them. That's part number one. But being an experimentalist myself, I know that that's only one part. So I think the other part is also, this is this little symbol down here, building together your own experiments. So in a click together fashion, this is not the focus of this workshop, but of part two, you can see how you can click together your experiments with like a standard backend, which is similar of use, like maybe you can compare it to something like Z3 in the type of usability and usage. And the last point, which I always want to emphasize is, which I think is also very important, is the point of sharing experiment with each other. So this is why it is a central platform that everyone just can use, that allows participants to share their experiment with other instructors. First of all, to just get a good start into the software, and also to share the knowledge, to ease replication, these kind of goals that we have in mind. The setup, we will just see in a minute, looks like this. In the classroom, normally the instructor has a projector where the main screen of the game is projected to the wall, where you can see the results, where you can start and stop the game, and all the participants log in via their mobile phones or via their computers, whatever they have. The only thing they need for this is internet access and a browser. So we wanted to keep it very, very simple, no installation of any app or anything related to that, just a simple link. For instructors, so ClassX is free of charge. You can just use it for any educational purposes. The only thing that we ask of people is if you use it in a publication, then there's a tools paper that you can cite, but that's our only payoff that we get from this. The rest is really the idea of bringing this experimental teaching forward. If you want to get instructor credentials, you can just go to classx.de and there provide your data, and then you will get those credentials via email. For participants, you don't need login credentials. So if they just participate in the experiment, they just get a password from you and they just log in. There's also, and we're extending this at the moment, a lot of resources. So first of all, there's an extensive documentation, which covers both how to run and how to develop ClassX games. And at the moment, we are working on 2 projects. One is called Econ Class Experiments. This is teaching material for trading games, which are based on the famous book by Ted Bergstrom and John Miller, who cooperated with us on this to make those experiments and move them to online, to ClassX. And the other thing which is we are developing at the moment is connected to Core. It's a project in the UK, Core Econ, which has a open teaching book. And they have a companion book, which is called Experience in Economics, where we, together with some other people, provide material connected to experiments. So these materials normally include instructions for the participants, instructions for the instructor, and also then some home exercises, some questions to ask after the experiment, and these kind of features. For participants, and then we go directly into our first experiment. Normally, it's sufficient to provide them with 1 slide. So if you're in the classroom, you give them this slide telling them navigate to this website, classx.uni-passau.de. There you can select your institution. So in my case, it's Sport College Berlin. Choose the name of the instructor or the name of the course. Participant is pre-selected, and then enter the password. As we are here in the online classroom, it's much easier. I just share the link with you in a minute, and you just click on the link. The third alternative that people have is this QR code that you can see here on the right. That works best if you print it somewhere on a working sheet or on the slides or somewhere that people can scan it with their mobile phones. For the online classroom, which we are in here, it's perfectly sufficient just to take the link and copy it to everyone. So I just switch to the browser. So the only thing as an instructor that you have to do is you go also to this website, classx.uni-passau.de. You select your institution, your account, your experimenter and lecturer, and then you just type in your password. And then you are logged in. ClassX has 3 screens, 3 parts. One is this overview where you start, which lists all the games that are there. So here you can see, for example, my own folders from my classes at Bard College Berlin. And down here you can find a long list of ready-made games covering different topics. Then there's a screen to edit the experiments, the editing mode, and there's a screen to run the experiments, the so-called lecture mode. That's the one that we're going to. And this is also the one that we will spend all the time now. The lecture mode is really the one that you just, if you are of the type saying, I just want to use experiments which have been pre-programmed, then this is the only part where you have to stay and where you have to click through and navigate. If you want to develop experiment, I just give you a brief glimpse at that. We don't go into any details. Here's the so-called editing mode where you can click together and program your game with little code snippets. So these games normally start with instruction. We start now with the first game. Before we do that, I just explain you briefly what you can do here. So you can select the games out of a list of games. Then here on this little QR code symbol, you again find all the login details. So for example, in our case, I know I want to share this now with you. So I copy the link and paste it in the chat window. So now you can all click on the link that you should see in the chat window, and it should open a browser window where you just see a yellow bar stating the game hasn't started yet. Please wait until it has started. Okay, then As an instructor, you always are navigated by these big blue buttons. They are the ones to push the game forward. They are not so easy to miss, so that's why we have them in big blue. Up here you find two other things, which is parameters, where you can change some of the parameters of the game, and here you can also restart the game. Okay, so let's play our first game. The decision where you put the instructions is up to you. So if the instructions are simple, like in this game, we normally have them on the main screen, or it's a short version of the instructions. If you have longer instructions, it's always very good to share them with students beforehand, for example, via PDF, so they can prepare before coming to class. Okay, the game that we're going to play now is, you will all be now paired in groups of 2. So we have 72 people in this virtual Zoom meeting, and we have 58 people. There's a little, maybe a bit hard to see from on your screen, see a little 58 saying 58 people have logged in. And the game goes as follows. You are paired in groups of 2, the red and the green player. You are both simultaneously deciding whether to invest or not. Your return to investment depends on the decision taken by the other player, as shown in the metrics below. And there will be some additional description on your mobile device or on your computers. One nice feature which we also use a lot in teaching is that you can also pay out people with real money. In this case, I said it in the following way, that one group will be randomly drawn and paid out. As I'm an experimental economist, as most of you are, I guess, you know that I cannot deceive you. So we will also actually pay out the money. How do we do this? At the end of this game, you will get the group who has won will get a payoff code and can take a screenshot of this payoff code, or just copy the payoff code and send it to me via email. And then I will just PayPal you the money. That's the way how we do it at the moment in the online classroom. In the offline classroom, you normally just say, look, if you have won, just take a screenshot from your mobile phone, and after class, just come to the instructor and collect the money. Okay, so we will play for actual money. So what are the payoffs? So red and green player, if both invest, both get 10 euros. So I will pay out in euros, which will then be converted in the currency of the country that you are in. If both of the players do not invest, both will get 5. If one player invests and the other does not, this player will get 0. So investment is only successful if both invest. If you do not invest, you do not take a risk. But if you are investing and you're the only one, then it gives you a payoff of 0. One, again, thing that I wouldn't mention to students, but I mention it to you as instructors, is we have this blue legal disclaimer box here in order to avoid, if there's anything, especially in the programs that you developed yourself, if there's any error in the programming and the payoffs are calculated in a strange way, so it's maybe not 10 euros, but then 1,000 euros by accident, then in order that to make clear that this is legally not binding, this disclaimer box says that the lecturer is responsible for the payoff, subject to a technical check for correctness of the winning codes. So this avoids that you are legally held responsible for this, and the subject can come and say, hey, you promised this to me. You said I won 10,000 euros in this game, and now I want this money. There had been experience from lab experiments where these kind of things happened, and I think in this case it's just a nice way to prevent this. Good. Then we just start the game. You still see the instructions and the matrix on screen. Make it a bit smaller. You also should see on your screen now your decision, and your decision can just be selected by clicking on the respective button. We have 29 red players at the moment, 26 green players. So if you haven't clicked on the link yet, it's never too late. That's another thing. if you are in the first stage of the game, so on the very first decision stage, participants can enter at any time still. So this is why it's always important also to keep this first stage open a bit for a while, that everyone has the chance to enter. Especially if, for example, want to skip the first stage and directly go to another round of the game or something like this, then it's always very advisable to keep this one open for long enough that everyone can log in. People can make their decisions. And one experience that we also have from all these years of teaching with it is, especially in bigger groups, you cannot wait for everyone. So you will always have to say at some point, okay, now it's time to stop. I give you another 30 seconds to make your decision, and then I will stop the game and we will see the results on the screen. We have another 20 seconds to get. We have 26 of the 30 red players who made their decision, 27 of the 28 green players. The link is still available in the chat. So okay, so 30 seconds are over. Now I show you the results. This is the big button, and this also pays out the payoffs in gray and a bit in small. There also a little button, do not pay out payoffs. If something is, I don't know, you just wanted to run a test run or something, you don't want to pay out people, you just click down at the small gray one. And we click there and we see the results. On your own screen, you should see now the decision of your partner in the game, and you also should see if you have been chosen to win the money or not. If you have been chosen, please take a screenshot, take a note of this payoff code, and just email it to me after this webinar so that we can then pay you via PayPal. As I said, we are experimental economists, so we don't deceive, so the payoff will actually be made. Good. This is always the critical point of the teaching process, because in this moment, and you saw it also that I stopped a little bit, had a look on the screen, you now have to interpret the data that you are given. And you hope normally that they coincide with the thing that you expected. In this case, it worked quite well, because what did I do? I was hiding a treatment here. So half of the people were assigned with a sentence stating you and your partner are investors in the UK, and the other half got the sentence you and your partner are investors in France. This is just a normal standard framing effect. You can do any types of treatments between subject treatments in these experiments. And I think that's, for me at least, it's always the most powerful and the most clear evidence that you can show to students, that you say, like, there was something different between the tasks for you, and this difference now gives us these results. Before we go to the result, one thing is very important and also influenced how we design classics. What happens if something goes wrong? I was, before I started the webinar, thinking, what are two good countries to choose in order to get the results that I want? One good thing is that you always have access to previous results. So there's a menu saying previous results. In bold, you can always find very typical results that we had from one run, and then you see there's a lot of other results. So in case something would have not behaved in the way that I expected, I always have a backup as a teacher, as an instructor, which is very important, because I want to prepare my lesson now. I want to start the storytelling now. It's also interesting to have diverging results, but I always need at least that I don't know, the story, which this is taken from a macroeconomics lecture. The story is now about multiple equilibria in investment behavior, or you can think about, in a behavioral game theory class, you can talk about multiple equilibria, the role of framing, the role of focal points, these kind of things. You can always go back. For example, this is now results from June 2016 with 200 participants. You see it looks very similar to the thing that we just played. That's good. So we don't need it in this case, but we always have this backup for many games that have been played a lot. This game was played, and this is quite an interesting date, at the end of June 2016. Around this time, there was an event that just has happened, which was the Brexit referendum. And some days after that, we just played this game. And the results still, we are still not fully done with this Brexit drama. So the results still work very nicely. What has happened here is that in the group, which has been framed to be investors in France, 81%, the blue bars, 81% coordinated on investing, and only 9% coordinated on not investing. Another 9% did some miscoordination. If we compare this to the UK, and the results have become a bit better than back in June 2016, but there's still a significant difference. In the UK, only 58.3% of the people coordinated on investment. So it's a really nice way, for example, now to talk about investment conditions, multiple equilibria, how can firms have to coordinate on investment behavior, these type of things. But I think the two features that I wanted to show you is, first of all, you can do treatments between subject. Normally, you don't tell students beforehand, and you surprise them a little bit with that. You can also be more open about what you're doing. You can pay out people. You can determine how many of these people will be paid out. And you can also play this type of metrics games that I guess most of you know. What normally would follow after such an experiment is that you then start a discussion in class. This has to be prepared, and this is also the effort we are doing at the moment to provide this additional teaching material, because it's always important to have some questions ready that you can ask to participants. Normally starting with the first impression about their own decision behavior, maybe the emotional feedback that they had, and then moving step by step forward to the behavior that you expect, the theoretical solution of the game, and comparing these results. The last step is then giving them some homework. What you always can do is here's a menu saying data, so you can always download your data as an Excel file and then give it to the students, maybe to do some deeper analysis with it. That's kind of the typical way that you can do it. So you play it maybe in the beginning of the class as a first motivation to start the topic, or you play it later when you first introduce the model, and then you try to connect it to the topic. Good. The last feature that I want to show you before we move to the second game is test participants. That's something which is very, very useful, because you can just sit down in your office, start your game for yourself, and just open some test participants. The test participants, as you can see, they open in a new browser window. So you can make multiple test participants. At the moment, the test participants see the same thing as all the participants who now want to try to enter this game. And this is, the current game is running, participation is no longer possible. So, but now if you're sitting in your office, you want to test out the game, you just restart the game and play it again. And you then, these test participants, you also will see this on your screen. You don't play it now another time, but you can see the screens of the participants in your own browser, and you can just play around with it, open 10 of these test players, for example, and then just click through the whole game. That's a very nice feature for testing, also for getting familiar with the game. Okay, and the last thing, some games, not all of them, have parameters which you can set right before starting the game. In our case, it's, for example, the country, selection of the countries that we playing this game, and the payoff structure. And here also you can see the number of groups for real payout, which I set to 1, can also be modified here. ClassX remembers these parameter settings that you gave to ClassX. So if you log in the next time, there's also no problem, because you will always be able to, like, the parameters have been saved also for the next time. So you can just, normally the setting will be, I don't know, you have the lecture on the next morning, the evening or the afternoon before, you just prepare this, test it a little bit, everything works fine, you set the parameters in a way that you want, you log out again, and then you just log in for your lecture, and you can then run your game. One important thing, it doesn't matter if you close this browser, if you log out, whatever happens, it doesn't affect the running of the game. So this is not a problem if you have, I don't know, a temporary break of your internet connection or whatever can happen. This will not destroy the game. You just log, or your computer shuts down because it runs out of battery. You just go there, log in again, and you're back in the game. This will be the investment game, the first of my little examples. The next one is, I take it now, you see there's different categories, sometimes based on projects that we have, like core econ, sometimes based on topic items. For example, one that I'm also was teaching for quite a while, experimental ethics, and there we have the so-called ambiguity game. The ambiguity game goes as follows. I just wanted to show you also another type of game, which is maybe a little bit different than the standard coordination game that we saw. This will now include the move of, again, two players. We again have the red and the green player. These players also, that's also something in design, these players can also be distinguished by the shape of these little figures. So the red player has a full head, and the green player has an empty head, in order to be also distinguishable for people with a problem with red and green blindness. So again, you see you can also play one game after the other. That's a nice feature. You can make one question. You can also make just survey questions. But the strength of Classic is here that people are always assigned to these roles. They are put together in groups. They're assigned to different treatments. That's also the main difference to any survey software. So for many of these ABCD questions, you can also run them here in ClassX, but you can use any type of Mentimeter survey software that is around. Here, the focus is really on interactiveness, matching people together. Okay, let's do this game. Also, this game, we just will play for payoff. I will just select again one group who gets the payoff. It's based on a paper by Dunn et al. 2007. There's a red and a green player. The red player can decide between two options, A and B. The red player gets the payoff X, and the green player gets the payoff Y. Before the red player decides between option A and B, the red player can decide to reveal the game, and thereby the payoff Y. The green player will not be informed if the red player revealed the game or not. So this looks like this. On the screen of the red player, he sees the payoffs, the potential payoffs, and then he can click on reveal game. If you don't want to reveal the game, just don't click there. What is behind these question marks? So the question marks are the payoff of the green player. In 50% of the cases, the payoff look like this. So if the red player chooses option A, he or she gets €6, and the green player gets €1. If the red player chooses option B, both get €5. In the other 50% of the cases, the payoffs look like this. If the red player chooses option A, he or she gets 6, but the green player gets 5. If we are in this scenario, in this world, then if the red player chooses option B, X, the payoff for the red player is 5, and Y is 1. Then you would ask if there's any questions. and clarify them. Are there any questions on the instructions of the game? I will just show them back in one second. You will also find them on your decision screen. We have 53 people logged in, and I start the game. So you see now if you're the red or the green player, here's the two worlds that we can be in. On the left-hand side in 50% of the cases, and in 50% we are on the right-hand side. You can, as a red player, have two decisions. You can decide to reveal the game by clicking the button, or you don't click the button and you leave the question marks as they are. And then you can make your decision, option A and B. The green player will be asked if he or she thinks the other player will reveal the game or not. And we see again already 32 people, 34 or 57 people already have answered. We can also click here and distinguish this between red and green players. For the green player, the decisions are a little bit easier. It's just one decision. For the red, it's two decisions. What you can learn a little bit also from following now me introducing these games is you always have this time in the middle of the game where you have to moderate and you have to talk while the game is still running. If you would be very strict on the experimental standards, you would just be quiet. If you think it's better to provide some storytelling to encourage participation, you can also do this. Okay, so again, we cannot, as always, not wait for everyone. One last comment on this red and green player and also all types of matching. This is another thing that is automatically implemented. That if their number is not matching, so if you have, for example, an uneven number of players and they have to be matched in pairs, ClassX automatically tries to satisfy everyone. So how does ClassX do this? ClassX does this by doubling decisions. So this is something that you would not do for research. That's something but that's something that you have to do for teaching. So the important thing is you have to make everyone happy, and everyone also should get some feedback. And in order to achieve this, ClassX then, for example, if there's one green player in abundance, then ClassX uses the answer of a red player and gives it to two green players. These data are not recorded, so it's not a problem for the data quality or anything. It's just a measure there to ensure that everyone gets enough feedback. As always with these things, you can set this off, so it's not necessary. And it's something that you can change, but it's like the default for most of these games. Okay, so we have, I think, almost everyone there. That's the last game today that we play for real payoffs. So I will now display the results and disperse the payoff. On your screen, you can see the feedback. You can see how much payoff you got. And you can also see if you have been chosen to get actually paid. If it's the case, please send us an email with the payoff code. Here, and normally what I would do is I start now, first of all, discussing how the decision was, what influenced the decision before we actually go to the results. So this game is about, as you may have guessed, ambiguity, and the way that ambiguity helps to make difficult decisions or morally loaded decisions, and that humans have the tendency to hide behind this ambiguity. So it's a way of self-protection that you don't reveal the game. No, for 37.5% of the red players do not reveal the game. And then it makes it much easier for them. Here we see to choose between option A and B. given the different scenarios. As I saw a little bit there were some questions in the chat about or what is a game and what is the connection between these games. So people always log into your account, and as long they are in ClassX tries everything to hold you in this account. In this account, you can play one game after the other. And you can also afterwards, if you want, link the results of these games with each other. Participants are completely anonymous in these games. It means we don't have any data of the participants, only personal data. This is also necessary because we have to follow the European standard of data protection. The IP address is encoded in a way that it cannot be read and it cannot be tracked back to the original format. But what is there's a little internal number that is stored as a cookie in all your browsers, following the normal cookie policy again. And with this thing, you can always kind of match participants that have done several decisions in different games. This matching may not be perfect because participants may use a different device or may drop out and drop in again, something like this. But as long as this cookie is available for ClassX, you can match this with this internal number. But again, this internal number is completely anonymous. Okay, that was the ambiguity game. Then you can see we can do similar things. And the last thing that I wanted to try out with you is a market game. So you can, again, as I said, you can do any types of sequential, simultaneous interaction with treatments, with groups, with roles. So meeting all the standards that we have in experimental economics. And you can also do market experiments. And these market experiments there's two types of them. One is via an order book. And the other one is the thing that we also, where we published the teaching material on this website, Econ Class Experiments, together with Ted Bergstrom and John Miller, about running the standard market experiments. I guess most of you will know them. The idea is that in the classroom, it's quite a nice feature that participants run around, talk to each other, negotiate, and then they enter the contracts in their phones. In the online world, we had to change a little bit that you can do the same thing online as well. In the classroom, it's really a nice crowded atmosphere. Everyone stands up and runs around the classroom. In the online classroom, it's a bit different experience, but you still can do these kind of market experiments. And I just want to show you this for a second. So the screen will look like this in a minute. It's a little bit more complicated than the ones before. You will be assigned sellers and buyers of a basket of apples. And you will also have a certain type. And you will have different seller costs and different buyer values. All this information can also later be found on your personal screen. In the session, you're an Apple supplier in one case. And in this case, you have seller costs. And your profit is your price that you agree on minus your seller costs. And if you're a buyer, you have a buyer value, and the profit is the buyer value minus the price. If you don't trade, your profit will be zero. So it's better not to trade rather than trading at a disadvantageous price, which is below the seller cost or above the buyer value. For trading, the only thing that you have to do is, here you see the sellers, they have this basket of apples, they enter a price and click on sell. If someone then accepts this offer, then this trade happens. So you're posting a sell offer. The same thing here on the other side for the buyers. They don't have an apple, they have here no item. They have this gray shaded basket of apples. They can enter a price they want to buy a basket of apples for. Down here, in the next step, there will be all the offers. You will see your own offers that you can withdraw with a red button, and you can see offers of other people that you can accept. Once you click on that, you will get a message saying, are you sure to do this? Because this thing happens very fast in order not to click accidentally on the wrong button. And then the trade is concluded, and then the market ends at a certain point. That's normally also the slides that you need for the students. Normally, I add a third slide telling them about the different payoff settings that are possible. And then we have the game. We have still 56 people logged in. As an instructor, normally I always check the parameters before I do anything. No, we have the public offers. So the offers sent to everyone here in the online classroom set to yes. We have minimum maximum price and we have currency. And then I can just click here and start the game. And now you should see if you're an Apple seller or an Apple buyer. And then the instructor screen works as our public board where we collect all the offers. So now you can look on your ClassX personal screen. And we already have open offers here, buy for 10, 20, 25. We have sell offers already popping up. You can see them also on your personal screen and just click on them, and we have the first contracts being concluded, and you can follow it live on the instructor screen if you want, if you're done already with trading. If you're still trading, just focus on your personal screen. And we have 10 trades already there. As an instructor, I do something now that I would never do in front of students. There's a prediction tab. So you can click on prediction and you see, okay, 18 trades should happen at a price of roughly 20. That's the supply and demand diagram. So that you can also know where the thing is going. So here you see a list of all the contracts concluded. You also see a chart how the prices developed over time that you can use, and you also see the averages. So we have 19 contracts concluded. The average price is 14.47. Okay, I think we can conclude the market. We can stop here. So I click now on feedback. So you all should get now feedback on your trade, if you made profit or not. And then you can, for example, start playing another round of the game. So let's just briefly have a look how well we did in coming close to the equilibrium. So the equilibrium price is 20. This is supply and demand. And the equilibrium quantity is 18. If we look in our average numbers, okay, our price is a little bit too low with 14.5. The quantity is in the right direction around 20. And you can see also other different measures. As always, you can always jump back and see, okay, what's typical results that you find in this game? These are our results, for example, from Pompeo Fabra in Spain. And there you can, with a lower number of people, you can see this is played then for a certain number of rounds. In the first rounds, you get a price of 20. And in the second round, a price of 30. And it's really well calibrated. These are these old experiments that works from John Miller. They have been calibrated in a way that they work with any group size. It doesn't matter if we these 70 people here in this room, or this was a group of 28 participants. So they can always be used. And for these experiments, we have this teaching material on this econ class experiments that you can use. Okay, then let me just to finish up and then also to open the room for questions and discussions. I have here the things that I told you already now during the game. I just put them on the slides. I leave them there to download if you're interested in the lecture, what you have to look at, and also before the lecture. Just also to highlight some other possibilities. There is, for example, public goods, standard public goods game, as we all know it, for 10 rounds. You can also include punishment. Has been programmed by Florian, and it's now also covered in this new companion book, Experience in Economics, again, with all the teaching material that you need. And this can also be played with small groups, but also with big groups of hundreds of people. The Apple market is the thing that we just played. This is covered in the econ class experiments. There's some teaching material. We played it a lot. This is one of the most used games in ClassX. I think it has been played around 5,000 to 8,000 participants at least. And you always get these results. You see it with these little dots around the equilibrium. And the thing that we just played in the very beginning, the investment game, is the next chapter that we're going to publish at the end of February in this Experience in Economics book, and which is the thing about coordination games, and a little bit for these examples. There's many other games in ClassX which maybe don't require documentation, standard games like Ultimatum Game, Beauty Contest. Don't know if Rosemary is here in the room, and many other games that many people know anyway by heart. And most of the games also have some type of explanation at the very beginning. Our effort at the moment is increasing the amount of teaching material to make these games also usable and user-friendly for other people. ClassX is currently used by a lot of people around the world. This is always this little word map that we have. As I said, it's really the effort. If you find this interesting, it's also always a nice thing to share with colleagues. Say, hey, have you ever done an experiment in class? The idea is really, we want to keep the barriers low, that you just go in there, click a little bit, start your first game, as we just did today. And then if you become curious and you want to start to dig deeper, then you can also design your own games. You can, maybe you want just to change a little bit an existing game, and add to the framing or add to the text, and you just copy this game and change the text a little bit. All these type of features that you can use. Good. So I hope you enjoyed this part, and I hope some of you earned the money and they will also claim it at the very end. We will now open the session for discussions, for questions. And I hope you can see a little bit where this can be used. As I said in the beginning, there will be these 2 additional webinars about teaching some examples how you can use this in macroeconomics. So we do this a lot for making these big macroeconomic interactive strategic processes experienceable. And there will then be the announced part 2, how to program these experiments. If you are on the list, I will always inform you about the dates to come. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and playing these games with me. And if you have to leave at any point, feel free to do so. Florian, I will also be here for any questions. And the recording of the seminar, as I said, I will put it on the ClassX DE webpage. And so you can rewatch it, and I also put the slides there. If there's any questions, you can always, there's a forum where you can write to, or you just always can email us to classx@uni-passa.de. And hopefully you will find time to use this somewhere in your research. And thanks a lot for your attention. Thanks, Florian, for the help with the chat. And I'm looking forward for your questions. Okay, Ali asking if the software can be used for field experiments or online experiments outside of the classroom context. Yes, so we did this in 2014. We are running at the moment big experiments in 11 countries with social norms and relations to corruption. So this is a thing that can be done. It has its challenges. For example, as you mentioned, this thing with the double participation, what you can do is, as always, you can provide them with little codes, with a little tick or a little ticket that they have to enter at the very beginning. And then you can make sure that everyone, for example, just participates once. That's one thing. There's always ways. No, this is a different setting than if you think about a lab experiment, because here you don't always have control about the number of people. People drop out at any point in time. So the only way to control for unique participation is with these little codes that you give to people beforehand. As long as, normally what ClassX also does, if you're logged in with one browser, ClassX tries to lock you in there and keep you there. So it's with one browser, one device, it's really hard to participate twice. And if you have the surprise on your side, as we did there, we just went there, there was a soccer game running, and now we play these games. I think not many people are prepared for this. So it's also maybe a smaller concern in such a case. Another thing that you have to think about is design contamination. So do people maybe spot what treatments other people had? But also there's measures that you can take. For example, what we did, we tracked, or we didn't track, but we asked people to enter the number of the table that they were sitting at in this beer garden. So we could also look at the spatial component of this and see if there's anything that's going on. The full discussion of this is also covered in this tools paper, where we talk about lab in the field and how you can use this. So it was not the focus of today, but so let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, translation. So ClassX comes always with 2 languages. But you can always copy it in more than 2. So you just copy the game and change everything, all the text that you see somewhere in the back end. I can show you an example of this. Just switch the screen back to ClassX. So we still have this game. You see, the game is always still running, and like as long as you don't start a new game, the old game is always running. If you look, for example, here in the Apple market, okay, there's in this case, a lot of programming, but you see that these things are always in different languages, and you just have to change the text that you see there. So this was, for example, in Spanish, in English, in esta sesión, and so on. ClassX with the languages, it also always has an account language. So each account has a language, and you can select in which language you want your account. ClassX then tries to get the game in the language that best fits to your account language. So if, I don't know, your account language, I think we had a lot of people also from Italy. If your account language, in this case, what you can do is you just program your game in Italian. So you change all the text to Italian, and this is your main language, and you just use this game. If the game is available in 2 languages, then ClassX tries to get the one which fits the language that you have, or takes the English version. That's the options that you have. If you look at the language options that you have, you can set them here. There's a thing which is called course data, where you can set, for example, the name of your course, and you can set the language. There is only 3 languages available, but you can use English as your standard account language, and then just program your games in Italian. That doesn't really impact the thing here. So you can, if you want to have it in different languages, copy it and just change the text that you see there. Just as we are on the screen, over here you can also log out all the participants. This can be important. For example, we had it back when I was at Pompeo Fabra. We had that you had several sessions in a row. You're a teacher, you're teaching 4 tutorials in a row, and you want to make sure that all the participants have been logged out from the previous seminar. Then you just go there, log out all the participants, and they're all gone. And you can start with the next tutorial group. These accounts, and that's maybe also important to mention, are there for if you want to run things in parallel. So normally the idea is that you can share an account. You can have, as you see here, for example, we have this account here has multiple users. So that's me and my tutor back at College Berlin. You can share an account, but at an account, always one game runs. So if you want to do things in parallel, for example, you have different tutorial sessions, you have different lectures running in parallel, then it's always good to get your own account. Otherwise, you can also use it and share it. You can change the name of the account. Most of the times I use my name, my first name and my last name. Sometimes I use also the name of the class. So if I have different accounts, for example, for different classes, then one would be macroeconomics, one would be FTX, one would be monetary economics. All these kind of things. Then I saw something with how does it compare to Weekend Lab and others. So I wouldn't think the judgment of better or worse. I think that's not the appropriate thing. It's I think Weekend Lab does a similar job. ClassX was developed by like this focus on mobile devices in the very beginning. So it tries to take account of this, had all this, but this is now very technical features of different screen sizes, adaptive screens that fit to each device that you have, and these kind of things. That's one difference. It also gives you full access, but I'm not an expert on Weekend Lab, so that's something maybe for those people who use both softwares, easier to compare. You can share the games with others. You can do your own games. You have, that's another important thing, full access to all your data. So I showed you that you always see the results of previous results here, but you can also deactivate this. If you don't want this, you can also set your game to be private, and then the data and the game and everything is your personal belonging. It's also your personal then license, and no one can use it. But ClassX allows to make it public. If you do it public, then it gets a Creative Commons license, and then people can use this by quoting you or by referring that you did the game. So you have all these different. So if, for example, if you do something for research, I would always put it to private and only share it once I have done the publication. If it's these teaching experiments, it's always nice to see that many people around, you can see it from such a list, used it. It's nice to compare results and so on. So you have the different settings. And in addition to these ready-made games that we offered here, so that we put together, there's also a repository, and this repository comes with a full list, a full set of many, many different games in very different development stages. So it's not something that you can you have to use it with care, but it's like something that you can. There's a lot of more games. All the games which someone has set public can be found. You can search for this. I don't know. If you said, I'm interested in Market for Lemons, then you get things that are connected to this, maybe in the wrong language, but maybe something that makes sense. You can import it to your account and test it. So the idea is really on sharing experience, sharing these games. Or the other way is you just see a game that you like. For example, you said, oh, I like this investment game that we played in the very beginning. It's here in the first line, and there's a little copy button. You copy it for yourself. It's then in your account, and you can do with it whatever you want. Yes, the YouTube link, I'm happy to share it. It's on the slides. And is there any other questions that we want to take up? Any comments that you have? Yeah, that's also now we're getting into more advanced topics. There's one thing that is hidden a little bit. So this is a typical player screen. I just started a test player. What you shouldn't tell students, but we can always do also in case, what sometimes can happen, for example, their browser or their smartphone may froze. So they may want to log out and log in again or something like this. You can, if you click on the classic symbol, there's these things which appear. They're all documented also in documentation if you wonder. It shows you this internal player number I was talking about. And it shows you a little log out button that you can log out here. And it shows this little telephone which tells you there is a connection running. So maybe if someone has connection problems, you can also check it there. But that's only something that you want to use if you troubleshoot the game. So you would then log out here, and then you're back on this. On this game, you can always select, I'm a participant, I'm an experimenter, or I'm administration. Administration would be for paying out the payoffs. We didn't want to call it payoffs because this creates some strange incentives. So it's called administration. And for example, if we log in now, you can see all the payoffs that have been paid out. So also the payoffs that have been paid out today. I just scroll down that you don't see the payoff codes, but here you would see all the payoffs that have been paid out. And we use it, for example, that the secretary of the chair then can pay out the different participants. If you're interested in more anonymous way of paying out people rather than they just come to you, show you the code, you can do it this way, that they then go to a third person. This third person logs in here, just sees the payoff code and the respective payoff, can get here a PDF as a receipt and then just pay out those people. So this administration thing is mainly used out for payoff. But as always, you can always just log out and then just change the rule. If you're logged in as an experimenter, you just go here and you can go on to log out, and you can log out here as well. And it gives you also links to the documentation. That's one important source if you're unsure about something. There's the help and discussion forum. It's a Google forum where you just can post questions and also other people can answer. And you also find the terms of use here. So yeah, the language, there's some questions about the programming language. So the language is PHP mainly in ClassX. You can enrich it a little bit with JavaScript if you want this interactive stuff. So for example, the thing that you saw in the ambiguity game, that these payoffs were shown, is based on JavaScript. The main things, the calculations are all based on PHP. The reason for this is well documented, it's very easy to learn, and it's used a lot in web programming. In addition to PHP, there's HTML. So all the boxes and all these text fields, they're all HTML. That's good because it's very flexible. You can include videos, audios, any type of HTML content that you also can include in normal websites. And the last question was concerning Lioness. Lioness is a little bit a different platform, which we did for running online experiments on Amazon MTurk and other online labor markets. Lioness, in contrast to ClassX, uses mainly JavaScript and not PHP. That has some historical reasons that we started with PHP, and then Lioness was first invented by the colleagues in Nottingham. Then we brought things together and joined our efforts here. So that's not perfectly comparable there. They use some different language. Both languages have their ups and downs, to be honest. PHP is a server-side language which runs on the main server, so it cannot so easily be manipulated. JavaScript is a client-side language which runs in your personal browser, which is nice because it's fast and you can make these interactive reactions. But it has the downside that for some you may always have to double check that no one manipulates the experiment. But both languages are web standards, and that's the reason why we thought they are useful, and they make sense in such a way. But the rest of the interface, just as a little which we then would discuss in a workshop on how to develop experiments, is based like a set tree, which I guess most of the people know. Like there's these little boxes, there's little code snippets where you do the calculations, and then there's other fields where you can design the experiments. So it follows the same logic as most of these standard experimental software. The attempt is really to keep it simple and to allow an easy start and an easy access without. In the beginning, you don't have to program too much, and then you can start. The more complex the experiments get, the more program you can add to this. Do we have any more questions? Is there something, Florian, that I overlooked? And that...
I don't think so. I think we've covered every question.
Good. Then if there's anything else, if someone also, feel free also to raise your question by the microphone if you want. And if this is not the case, I just also may thank you all again. And as I said, I will keep you informed about, at the moment, the planning. My time management is a bit more complicated, so that's why I haven't really scheduled the second part. As soon as I do this, I will just let you know, and always feel free to join. And for the rest, it was a pleasure to see you all, and good luck. And most of all, stay all healthy. I think that's the most important in those times. And then hopefully at some point we all get the chance to meet each other in person at some point. Thanks a lot. I stopped the recording now. Feel free to ask any questions also after that. And for the rest, have a nice evening.